I brought the alien boy home. I was breathless at the award the Queen gave me. Captain Leora Tran sat in the pilot's seat of her small research ship, the Starwind, staring out into the endless stretch of stars. The vastness of space always brought her a strange mix of wonder and loneliness. She had spent 10 years traveling the edges of explored galaxies, collecting data on planets that no one else dared to visit. Today, her mission was simple: survey an uncharted planet on the outer rim, take samples, and return home. But as she descended through the blue-purple clouds of the planet's atmosphere, she could not have guessed that her life was about to change forever. The sensors on the Starwind beeped urgently. Something unusual was detected in a small, hidden valley near the equator of the planet. Leora's curiosity flared. She had seen many strange things in her career: shapes in clouds, minerals that glowed, creatures that walked on two heads. But the system readings she saw now were unlike anything in the database. Leora maneuvered her ship carefully, landing in a small clearing surrounded by thick, luminescent trees. The light from the flora bathed the ground in soft shades of pink and green. A gentle wind rustled the leaves, and Leora noticed movement near a cluster of rocks. Her heart skipped a beat. From behind the rocks, a small figure emerged. It was tiny, no taller than a human child, but its skin glowed faintly in colors that shifted like liquid light. Its large eyes reflected curiosity and fear in equal measure. Leora froze, unsure whether the being was dangerous. Yet something in its posture, the way it tilted its head, reminded her of a child lost in the woods. "Hello," she said softly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. The small being did not respond at first. Its eyes studied her, unblinking. Then it took a hesitant step forward. Leora could see its body was fragile. Its limbs were thin and its movements were careful, almost painful. She realized it was hurt. The sensors confirmed her fears: minor injuries, but enough that the creature would not survive long in the wild. Leora made a quick decision. She could leave and report her findings later, but the thought of leaving it behind, alone and vulnerable, was unbearable. She carefully opened the ship's cargo bay, letting the warm artificial light spill onto the clearing. The small alien hesitated, but when Leora extended a hand, it slowly approached, placing its tiny hand into hers. The moment was surreal. Leora could feel a gentle warmth radiating from the alien's body, and for a second, she imagined it was a human child. She wrapped it in a soft blanket she carried for emergencies. Its skin shimmered under the fabric, and it let out a small, almost musical sound, a sound that made Leora's heart ache with a protective instinct she had never felt before. Back on the ship, Leora tried to communicate. She spoke slowly, using simple words. "My name is Leora. You are safe." The alien tilted its head, as if understanding her meaning but not the language itself. It made another soft sound, one that seemed to echo in the quiet cabin. For hours, Leora observed it, checking its wounds and feeding it small nutrient gels from her medical kit. The alien, which she had begun to call Kale in her mind, responded to her care with quiet trust. It even mimicked small movements she made, tilting its head, blinking, and pressing its tiny fingers against the glass of the ship's window. By nightfall, Leora realized something remarkable. Kale was not only intelligent, but also unusually aware of his surroundings. He seemed to understand the concept of safety and danger. Every time she adjusted a control panel or checked the ship's instruments, his glowing eyes followed her with curiosity. He reached toward moving parts, but withdrew his hand when Leora gently stopped him. Leora sat back in her chair, exhausted but unable to sleep. She stared at the small being curled on a soft blanket beside her. The discovery of an intelligent alien species was already astonishing, but what made her heart race was the feeling that Kale was not just another creature to study. He was sentient. He had thoughts, fears, and perhaps even emotions. The next morning, Leora prepared the ship for departure. She transmitted a brief message to her command center, explaining that she had found an unknown life form and would return for further instructions. The reply came quickly, filled with standard protocol. Do not transport extraterrestrial life without authorization. Quarantine procedures must be followed. Unauthorized interference may result in disciplinary action. Leora frowned at the screen. She knew the rules. She had followed them her whole career, but she could not ignore the small, fragile life beside her. Kale looked up at her with glowing eyes and she felt a surge of determination. There was no way she could leave him behind, not when he had trusted her, not when he needed her. The journey back to the main human colonies was tense. Leora had to avoid patrols and navigate through asteroid belts, solar flares, and radiation storms. Kale, despite his injuries, seemed fascinated by everything. He reached for buttons and screens, and although Leora gently restrained him, she began to notice something strange. He could interact with the ship's systems in subtle ways. Lights flickered when he touched panels. Energy readings changed slightly. At first, Leora thought it was coincidence, but the pattern became impossible to ignore. During a particularly rough storm of cosmic debris, Kale moved toward the ship's controls and the shield strengthened. Leora watched in awe. The alien boy had an innate connection with technology, almost like he could sense it, understand it, and manipulate it without words. It was unlike anything humans had encountered before. Over the days, as the journey continued, Leora and Kale formed a routine. She fed him, cleaned his wounds, and spoke to him constantly, describing the stars, planets, and the things humans had discovered. Kale listened, sometimes emitting musical sounds that varied in pitch. Leora began to notice that these sounds were not random. They followed patterns almost like a language, though she could not yet understand it. One evening, as the Starwind drifted past a distant gas giant, Leora spoke aloud, more to herself than to Kale. I wonder where you come from. Are you the last of your kind? Or are there others like you? Kale responded with a gentle glow of his skin, pulsating in rhythm with the soft hum of the ship. Leora felt a deep connection in that moment, as if they were communicating in ways beyond human speech. But not everything was simple. Leora knew that transporting an alien species without permission was risky. If the authorities discovered Kale, they might separate them, or worse, restrict Kale's freedom. She also worried about other dangers, predators, spies, or aliens who might have a claim over him. Yet despite the fear, Leora's resolve only grew stronger. She would protect Kale. She would bring him to safety, even if it meant risking her career. During the third week of travel, Kale's abilities became even more pronounced. He could anticipate minor malfunctions before they happened, guide Leora to avoid dangerous routes, and even sense approaching storms. Leora realized that Kale's talents were extraordinary, not just for survival, but potentially for the benefit of all humanity. She began to dream of what it would mean if humans and Kale could learn from each other. One night, as Leora slept in short bursts, she awoke to a soft glow illuminating the cabin. Kale had activated the ship's observation screens, projecting images of distant galaxies, planets, and stars. The patterns of light were mesmerizing, almost like a story. Leora sat beside him, holding his small hand. In that moment, she knew their journey was no longer just about returning home. It was about discovering the universe together, about trust, friendship, and the unbreakable bond forming between human and alien. The Starwind continued its journey, silently carrying two unlikely companions across the cosmos. Leora felt both fear and exhilaration. They were pioneers, not just of space, but of understanding. She did not yet know what awaited them at the human colonies or what challenges they would face. But one thing was certain, she would not leave Kale behind. Humanity, she realized, was capable of great courage. And perhaps, just perhaps, the universe had brought her Kale for a reason. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Leora whispered, "We'll get through this, Kale." Together, and for the first time in her life, she felt that they truly could. The journey back to human colonies continued through the deep, dark reaches of space. The Starwind glided silently among the stars, carrying Captain Leora Tran and the small alien boy she had named Kale. Each day, Leora learned more about Kale, and each day she was amazed. Kale was no ordinary creature. Though he looked fragile, his mind was sharp, and his awareness of the universe was astonishing. Leora noticed that Kale often stared at the stars with a kind of understanding that humans could not reach. He seemed to sense patterns in the constellations, as if the stars themselves were speaking to him. One morning, while Leora adjusted the ship's navigation systems, Kale climbed onto the control panel. She quickly moved to stop him, worried he might damage the equipment. But the moment she touched him, a soft glow spread across Kale's skin and the console hummed softly. Alarms that should have been triggered remained silent. Leora stared in awe. You're helping me," she whispered. Kale tilted his head, blinking large, luminous eyes. Then he reached toward the main screen, touching the route map. Lines of light shifted, correcting the ship's path. Leora realized that Kale could sense the safest way through space hazards, almost instinctively. "Looks like we make a good team," she said with a smile, her hand brushing his. Kale responded with a soft, musical sound, a kind of laugh, though unlike any human laugh she had heard. Over the next few days, Leora began to teach Kale small things about human life. She showed him how to eat, how to clean, how to communicate simple words. Kale was a quick learner, absorbing everything like a sponge. He learned human expressions too, mimicking a smile or a curious frown. Leora was fascinated. Not only did Kale understand, he also seemed to enjoy learning. At night, the two of them would sit together in the observation deck, watching the stars. Leora talked about Earth, the oceans, mountains, and cities filled with people. Kale listened, tilting his head, eyes reflecting the stars. Sometimes he made small glowing patterns with his skin, like shapes of the planets Leora described. Leora began to think of these as his way of telling stories. "You must have come from a very far place," she said one evening, tracing the glowing shapes on his skin. "Were there others like you?" Kale's glow shifted to a soft blue. He reached out and touched her hand, and she felt a strange warmth, as if he was trying to communicate without words. Leora realized that he was capable of emotions much deeper than she had imagined. He could feel friendship, trust, and perhaps even something like gratitude. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day. Leora became more protective, and Kale responded with curiosity and affection. When she slept, he stayed near, quietly glowing like a small lantern in the dark cabin. Leora often woke to find him watching over her, and she felt a strange comfort in his presence. But it was not just Kale who was learning. Leora found herself changed too. She discovered patience she had never needed before, empathy she had never realized she possessed. The little alien boy had opened her heart in ways she could not explain. She was no longer alone in the universe. Together, they shared a connection that transcended species, a bond built on trust, care, and understanding. One day, the ship passed near an asteroid belt. Leora had plotted a careful course, but debris moved faster than predicted. A large rock suddenly threatened to collide with the Starwind. She shouted a warning, but Kale was already glowing brightly, his small hands hovering above the controls. The ship shuddered as energy fields strengthened around it, diverting the asteroid just in time. Leora's jaw dropped. "Kale, you saved us," she said, eyes wide with amazement. Kale blinked slowly and made a soft, melodic sound as if acknowledging her words. It was clear now that his abilities were not random. He could interact with energy and technology in ways humans could not fully understand. Yet he did it gently, without harming the ship or themselves. Leora felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. She realized that Kale was a being of great potential and that the galaxy had entrusted her with his care. As they traveled further, Leora began to teach Kale more complex human concepts. She taught him numbers, simple tools, and even a few words of human language. Kale picked them up quickly, repeating them in his own way, often accompanied by glowing patterns on his skin. It was clear that he was not just intelligent, but also capable of learning at a remarkable speed. One evening, Leora decided to test Kale's memory. She drew a simple diagram on a tablet showing a path through a maze. Kale traced the pattern with his finger, then repeated it perfectly moments later. Leora clapped her hands in delight. "You're incredible, Kale. You might know more about this universe than any human alive." Kale glowed with excitement, the colors shifting rapidly across his skin. Leora laughed, feeling a joy she had not experienced in years. It was not just about the discoveries or the journey home. It was about the friendship, the shared moments, and the trust growing between them. But their bond was not without challenges. Kale sometimes became scared by sudden noises, strange lights, or the endless darkness of space. Leora learned to be patient, soothing him with gentle words and careful movements. She realized that trust was fragile, and she could not force him to feel safe. He had to choose to trust her. As the days passed, Leora and Kale faced minor emergencies that tested their teamwork. One day, a small meteor struck the ship's exterior, damaging a crucial sensor. Leora tried to repair it, but the tools were heavy and the panel too complex for her alone. Kale moved to assist, glowing softly as he touched the circuits. The sensor blinked back to life. Leora stared in disbelief. "I don't know how you did that," she said. Kale made a sound, almost like a laugh, and leaned against her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it said more than words ever could. Leora realized that Kale was not just helping her with technology, he was helping her with courage. He reminded her that no matter how small or vulnerable one might feel, strength could come from connection, understanding, and trust. During another quiet evening, Leora reflected on the rules she had broken. She had transported Kale without permission, and there could be consequences. Yet, she knew that leaving him behind would have been far worse. The human colonies might not understand him. Authorities might see him as a threat. But she could not think in terms of rules alone. She had to think in terms of what was right. Kale seemed to sense her thoughts. He glowed faintly, reaching for her hand, and Leora felt a wave of reassurance. They were in this together. No matter what dangers or challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team. One night, as Leora slept, she awoke to find Kale watching the stars through the observation deck. The soft glow of his skin reflected in her eyes. He gestured toward the vast expanse, then looked at her as if asking a question without words. Leora understood instantly. He was curious about the universe, eager to explore, learn, and experience. "You'll see, Kale," she whispered. "There's so much out there. Together we can discover it all." Kale's glow brightened, a ripple of colors spreading across his small body. Leora laughed softly, feeling a sense of hope she had never known. She had found more than a discovery on that distant planet. She had found a friend, a companion, and perhaps even a new purpose. The bond between human and alien grew stronger every day. Leora no longer felt the isolation of space. Kale's presence filled the ship with light, warmth, and life. Together, they shared every moment, the joy of discovery, the thrill of survival, and the quiet comfort of companionship. As the Starwind approached the outer borders of human-controlled space, Leora knew that challenges awaited them. Other humans might be suspicious. Aliens might see Kale as a key to power, but she also knew that their bond was unbreakable. No matter what came next, they had already proven something remarkable. Humans were capable of extraordinary compassion, courage, and ingenuity. And with Kale at her side, Leora felt ready to face anything. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the ship moved steadily toward home. Leora glanced at Kale, sleeping quietly under a soft blanket. She smiled, feeling a sense of pride and hope. They had survived the journey so far, and she was confident they could face whatever challenges lay ahead. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, Leora thought, perhaps the universe itself was watching, curious to see what humans and Kale could accomplish together. And in that moment, she knew the answer. Together, there was no limit to what they could achieve. The journey back to the human colonies had been long, but Captain Leora Tran and Kale had grown stronger together. Leora had learned to understand the small alien boy's needs and abilities, while Kale had learned to trust and rely on her. Yet, despite the calm that filled the Starwind, Leora could feel a subtle tension in the air, a warning she could not ignore. It began with small anomalies in the ship's sensors, objects appearing on radar that were not there, strange energy readings that flickered and vanished, signals intercepted from unknown sources. Leora frowned, adjusting the controls. "We're not alone," she whispered to herself. Kale, sensing her unease, glowed a soft blue, a color he usually displayed when calm. But now it flickered, shifting rapidly. Leora realized he was aware of the approaching threat before her instruments could even detect it. He climbed onto the console and pressed his small hands on the control panel. The ship's shield strengthened automatically, a subtle but powerful response. Leora's heart raced. "You can sense them, can't you?" she asked. Kale blinked and his glow shifted to a steady green. It was the closest thing to a nod she had ever seen from him. Hours later, as the Starwind passed through an asteroid field, the threat revealed itself. A fleet of sleek, dark ships emerged from behind a belt of rocks, moving with precision and speed. Their shapes were unfamiliar, but their intent was clear: intercept and capture. Leora's instincts screamed danger. She immediately engaged evasive maneuvers, weaving the ship through the asteroids while Kale activated his energy fields to reinforce their shields. The attackers fired small pulses of energy, striking the ship's hull with loud bangs. The shields held, thanks to Kale, but Leora knew they couldn't last forever. "We need a plan," she shouted over the alarms. Kale glowed intensely, his colors shifting in rapid patterns, as if communicating an idea. Leora studied the console, trying to interpret his signals. Then she saw it, a route through the densest part of the asteroid field. It was risky, almost suicidal, but Kale indicated it could work. Trusting the boy's instincts, she maneuvered the ship, weaving between massive rocks, narrowly avoiding collisions. The pursuing ships struggled to follow, their larger size working against them. "You're incredible, Kale," Leora yelled, her voice a mix of fear and excitement. Kale responded with a joyful glow, almost like a laugh. For the first time, she realized how much his presence was more than helpful. It was essential to survival. Together, they were more than a pilot and an alien. They were a team. As the last of the pursuing ships fell behind, Leora took a moment to breathe. "We're not out of danger yet," she said, checking the ship's systems for damage. The asteroid field had scratched the hull and overloaded some circuits, but nothing critical. Kale curled up beside her, glowing softly, and Leora felt a wave of relief. Over the next few days, the fleet continued to follow them, maintaining a careful distance. Leora knew it was only a matter of time before the attackers tried another approach. She began to plan, using everything she had learned from years of space travel and everything she now understood from Kale's abilities. Together, they developed a strategy to evade detection, using asteroid fields, energy pulses, and Kale's subtle influence over the ship systems. One night, as the Starwind drifted near a small gas planet, the attackers launched a sudden strike. Multiple ships emerged from the shadow of the planet, firing energy beams directly at them. Leora's hands flew over the controls, engaging evasive maneuvers, while Kale activated his energy field. The beams bounced harmlessly off the shields, but the force of the attack shook the ship. Leora gritted her teeth, her mind racing. "We have to fight back," she shouted. Kale's glow intensified, and the ship's weapons responded to his subtle signals, firing precise pulses that disabled the attackers' engines without harming the crew. Leora stared in awe. The alien boy had an instinctive understanding of energy and technology far beyond human comprehension. After the battle, Leora checked the ship and found no major damage. The attackers had retreated, but it was clear they would return. She realized that Kale's abilities were a double-edged sword. They protected them, but they also made Kale a target. Some beings in the galaxy would want to capture him, either for power or for study. Leora's responsibility was heavier than ever. Over the following week, Leora taught Kale more about human strategy and survival. She explained concepts of defense, warning systems, and basic tactics, though he seemed to understand instinctively. Kale's abilities continued to amaze her. He could sense the intentions of nearby ships, anticipate movements, and subtly influence technology to help them. It was as if he could feel the universe around him, reacting faster than any human could. Yet, for all his power, Kale remained gentle. He never harmed unnecessarily, never acted aggressively unless it was to protect them. Leora realized that his morality, like his abilities, was extraordinary. It was a lesson in itself. Strength combined with compassion could overcome even the greatest dangers. One evening, as they rested near a small moon, Leora watched Kale playing with a simple holographic projection she had made of Earth. He touched the images of oceans and mountains, glowing brightly with fascination. Leora felt a deep warmth in her heart. "You're going to see the world one day, Kale," she whispered. "I promise we'll make it there safely." Kale looked up, his glowing eyes reflecting trust and hope. In that moment, Leora knew that no matter the threats they faced, they would endure. Their bond was stronger than fear. Their courage was shared, and together, they could overcome almost anything. However, the challenges were far from over. While Kale's abilities helped them evade immediate danger, Leora knew that other humans might not understand. Authorities might see Kale as a threat, and other alien species might see him as an opportunity. Every decision she made had to balance survival, trust, and the safety of the small boy she had come to care for. During one particularly tense encounter, a massive alien warship appeared on the Starwind's radar. Its weapons were more advanced, and its fleet was larger than any Leora had faced. Kale glowed a deep red, a color she had learned meant heightened awareness or warning. Leora knew that this would be their greatest challenge yet. As the warship closed in, Leora and Kale worked in perfect harmony. Leora piloted with precision, weaving through asteroids, while Kale's energy fields deflected attacks and guided the ship's systems. They were not just surviving, they were demonstrating the strength and ingenuity of humanity. Leora realized that humans, though physically weaker than many alien species, had something unique: adaptability, creativity, and courage in the face of danger. The battle lasted for hours. Leora's hands were raw from gripping the controls, her mind exhausted from constant calculation and reaction. Kale's glow shifted with every move, signaling adjustments and responses that Leora could barely keep up with. And yet, they persevered. Through teamwork, intelligence, and trust, they outmaneuvered the larger fleet, forcing the warship to retreat. When the danger finally passed, Leora slumped into her seat, breathing heavily. Kale curled beside her, glowing a soft green as if to calm her nerves. She reached out and held his tiny hand, feeling the warmth and life radiating from him. "We did it, Kale," she said softly. "We survived together." For the first time, Leora understood something vital. Humans were not just survivors. They were problem solvers, explorers, and protectors. And when humans worked together with beings like Kale, their potential was limitless. The universe was vast, full of dangers and unknowns, but it also held the promise of discovery, friendship, and triumph. As the Starwind continued its journey toward the human colonies, Leora reflected on the events they had faced. She knew the threats were far from over, but she also knew that their bond had grown unbreakable. They had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, and had come through stronger. Kale looked up at her, his glowing eyes filled with trust and admiration. Leora smiled. "No matter what comes next," she whispered, "we'll face it together." And for the first time, she truly believed it. Together, human courage and alien wisdom could overcome anything the universe threw at them. The galaxy was vast, but the bond between Leora and Kale was even greater. A reminder that hope, trust, and teamwork were powerful weapons, more effective than any weaponry or technology. The stars stretched endlessly around them, a constant reminder of both danger and possibility. And with Kale by her side, Leora knew they could face any challenge, survive any threat, and continue their journey toward a future filled with discovery, friendship, and the triumph of humanity. The Starwind descended toward the bustling human colony of Nova Prime, a sprawling city of gleaming towers and interstellar docks. The journey had been long, and Leora Tran felt the weight of responsibility heavier than ever. Kale, the small alien boy who had become her companion, sat quietly on the observation deck, his glowing skin reflecting the soft lights of the ship. For weeks, Leora had worried about what would happen when they reached human territory. Would the authorities accept Kale? Would they see him as a threat or a curiosity to be studied? Or worse, would they separate her from him? She did not know, but one thing was certain: she would not abandon him now. As they approached the colony, the control tower contacted Leora. "Captain Tran, your arrival is authorized. Prepare for docking." "Be aware there will be inspection teams waiting for you," said the voice over the comms. Leora nodded. "Understood," she replied. Her hands tightened around the controls. Kale sensed her tension and reached out, his glowing hand brushing hers. Leora smiled softly. He was calm now, but she knew the coming hours would test both their courage. Docking was smooth, and soon Leora and Kale stepped out onto the platform, greeted by a mix of officials, scientists, and curious onlookers. Everyone had heard of the small alien boy traveling through space under Leora's protection. Whispers filled the crowd. Some admired her bravery, others doubted her judgment. Leora held Kale close, keeping him shielded from prying hands. He looked around at the humans with wide eyes, absorbing everything. His glow pulsed softly, a mix of curiosity and caution. "Captain Tran," an official called, stepping forward, "we must examine the alien for security purposes. Please follow us." Leora took a deep breath. "I understand," she said, though her mind raced. She knew the examination could be intimidating for Kale. The boy had been through enough already. "Kale, it's okay," she whispered. "They're only curious. Stay close to me." The examination room was bright, filled with advanced scanners and instruments. Scientists studied Kale, measuring his abilities, his health, and his energy patterns. Leora stayed by his side the entire time, explaining in calm, gentle words whenever Kale seemed unsure. To Leora's surprise, the scientists were not alarmed. Kale's abilities were remarkable, but they sensed his gentle nature. He did not attack, did not resist, and showed no aggression. Instead, he seemed curious and intelligent, even trying to interact with the scanners. Leora realized that Kale's nature was his greatest gift. He was proof that beings could be powerful without being dangerous, that intelligence, empathy, and morality were as important as strength. After hours of study, the head scientist turned to Leora. "Captain Tran, Kale is extraordinary. But more importantly, the way you have cared for him, protected him, and guided him demonstrates human qualities that are rare even among our best explorers. You have shown courage, compassion, and wisdom." Leora felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you," she said softly. "He trusts me and I trust him. That's all that matters." Word of Kale's arrival and Leora's bravery spread quickly. Soon, a special invitation arrived from the Galactic Council, a gathering of leaders from multiple planets, including the Queen herself, who ruled over the Interstellar Federation. Leora was to present Kale and advocate for his safety and freedom. The council chamber was immense, filled with representatives from countless species. Tall beings with multiple limbs, creatures that floated without wings, and humans in formal attire all watched as Leora stepped forward, holding Kale's hand. "My name is Captain Leora Tran," she began, her voice steady despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I have brought Kale here not as a threat, but as a being who deserves safety, respect, and the chance to learn. He is intelligent, compassionate, and curious about the universe. He has helped me survive, and in doing so has taught me more than any mission ever could." The chamber was silent. Leora continued, speaking from the heart. "Some may see him as different. Some may fear what they do not understand. But I ask you to see what he truly is. A reminder that life, no matter its origin, deserves care. Humanity, in protecting Kale, has shown that courage and empathy are strengths, not weaknesses." Kale, sensing her seriousness, glowed softly, almost as if supporting her words. The council members whispered among themselves, intrigued by the bond between human and alien. Leora felt a swell of hope. The queen rose from her throne, a figure of grace and authority. Her presence was commanding, yet her eyes held kindness. "Captain Tran," she said, her voice clear and melodic, "you have risked your life to protect a being that the galaxy does not yet fully understand. You have demonstrated qualities that are the best of humanity: bravery, compassion, and wisdom. For this, you are to be honored." Leora felt her knees weaken. "Your Majesty, she began, but Kale's soft touch on her hand steadied her. The Queen continued, holding a small, shining medal. "This is the Galactic Harmony Medal, awarded to those who act not for personal gain, but for the good of others, regardless of species. Captain Tran, you and Kale have reminded us all that understanding and care can bridge even the greatest divides in the universe." Leora could hardly believe it. The medal was placed in her hands, its weight both literal and symbolic. She looked at Kale, whose glow shifted to bright, joyful colors. Together, they had not only survived the journey but had shown the galaxy the best of humanity. After the ceremony, Leora and Kale were escorted to a quiet chamber. Officials congratulated her, but Leora's attention was on the boy beside her. "We did it, Kale," she whispered. "We showed them who we are, and we've protected you." Kale glowed warmly, reaching for her hand. It was more than a gesture. It was understanding, gratitude, and trust. Leora realized that this journey had been about more than reaching the colonies. It had been about proving that humanity's courage, ingenuity, and compassion could stand alongside the greatest powers in the galaxy. Over the next days, the Council allowed Kale to remain under Leora's care, granting special permissions for his protection and learning. Scientists began working with him voluntarily, learning from his abilities and teaching him about humans. Leora watched as Kale interacted with new technology, his glowing hands tracing patterns that even advanced machines responded to. But it was not only about technology. Kale was learning about friendship, trust, and culture. He laughed in response to simple jokes, curiously tasted new foods, and even began to mimic human expressions. Leora saw him grow each day, not just in knowledge but in character. Meanwhile, the story of Leora and Kale inspired others across the colonies. Humans began to reflect on what they could achieve through courage, cooperation, and empathy. Kale's presence reminded them that the universe was full of possibilities, and that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or wealth, but character and the willingness to protect life in all its forms. One evening, Leora and Kale sat together in the observation deck, watching the stars. The city below glowed, full of life and movement, but Leora's thoughts were on the journey ahead. "We've made a difference, Kale," she said softly. Not just for you, but for everyone. You've changed the way they see us and the way we see ourselves. Kale reached out, touching her hand, and his glow pulsed in gentle waves. Leora smiled. She knew that their work was not finished. There would be more challenges, more unknowns, and perhaps more dangers. But they had proven something important. Together, humans and Kale could face anything. The Queen's recognition had given them authority, but it had also given them hope. Hope that the universe could be a place where understanding and courage mattered as much as power. And as Leora gazed at Kale's glowing eyes, she realized that their journey was far from over. They had survived, learned, and triumphed, but the adventure was only beginning. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, new opportunities awaited. Humans and Kale would explore, discover, and grow. They had proven the value of trust and courage. And through it all, they had shown that humanity, at its best, could inspire even the stars themselves. As the night stretched across Nova Prime, Leora whispered to Kale, "This is only the beginning. The universe is waiting for us." Kale's glow brightened in agreement, and together they looked out at the galaxy, ready to face whatever adventures awaited. For Leora and Kale, recognition was not the end. It was a promise of what they could achieve together, a testament to human spirit, and the start of a story that would inspire countless others across the stars. Months had passed since Captain Leora Tran received the Galactic Harmony Medal from the Queen. Life on Nova Prime had grown busy and vibrant, yet every day reminded Leora of the journey she and Kale had endured together. The small alien boy, once fragile and frightened, had grown confident, curious, and even playful, learning more about humans and the galaxy with each passing day. Kale's abilities continued to amaze scientists, engineers, and explorers alike. His intuitive understanding of technology and energy was extraordinary, but what drew attention even more was his gentle spirit. Despite his power, he never acted aggressively. He treated every living being with care, demonstrating that intelligence and strength could coexist with kindness and empathy. Leora watched Kale interact with humans and other alien species visiting Nova Prime. He glowed brightly as he demonstrated how to repair equipment with minimal energy, how to redirect power efficiently, and even how to sense changes in the environment that could indicate danger. People were amazed. Some whispered in awe, others observed with careful study, but all saw one thing clearly. Kale was unique, and humans, through Leora's care, had earned his trust. Leora often reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From the moment she discovered Kale injured on a distant planet to the dangerous encounters with hostile fleets, and finally to the recognition by the Queen herself, every step had tested her courage, her judgment, and her humanity. Yet through it all, she had never faltered in her determination to protect Kale. And now, she realized, that courage had inspired others. The Galactic Council had invited her to speak about her experiences. Leora stood before a large assembly, including humans and representatives from countless alien civilizations. Kale glowed softly at her side, a calm, reassuring presence. "Many of you have seen Kale," Leora began, her voice steady. "But I ask you to look beyond his abilities. Look at what we as humans can do when we choose empathy, courage, and understanding. Kale trusted me and I trusted him. Together we survived. Together we learned. And together we have proven that cooperation and compassion are strengths, not weaknesses." The audience was silent, listening with rapt attention. Leora continued, "Humanity has faced challenges before on Earth, in our colonies, and now among the stars. And every time we have found ways to adapt, to survive, and to thrive. Kale's presence here is not just about what he can do. It is about what we can do together. We can protect, nurture, and learn from those who are different, and in doing so, we become stronger." After the speech, representatives approached them, offering collaborations, ideas, and invitations. Scientists wanted to work with Kale to understand his abilities. Educators wanted to teach about empathy, trust, and cooperation using his story. Leora felt proud but also cautious. She knew that Kale's safety was always the priority. "Don't worry, Kale," she whispered as they left the assembly hall. "We'll make sure they only learn what is safe and good. You'll never be treated like an experiment, not while I'm here." Kale glowed in response, reaching for her hand. It was a simple gesture, yet it conveyed deep trust and understanding. Leora smiled. Their bond had grown beyond words. It was a connection that guided their decisions, actions, and hopes. As weeks passed, Kale's story spread across the galaxy. Humans and aliens alike began to see the value in cooperation. Some humans who had previously been skeptical of alien species now approached Kale with curiosity rather than fear. And Kale, in his gentle way, taught them that differences could be celebrated, not feared. One day, the Queen herself visited Nova Prime to observe Kale. Leora and Kale greeted her respectfully. The Queen's eyes softened as she watched Kale interact with the human children in the city's learning centers. The children were fascinated by his glowing patterns, and Kale responded with gentle lights, shapes, and melodies that made the children laugh and learn. "Captain Tran," the Queen said, speaking to Leora privately, "you have done more than protect this boy. You have shown the galaxy that humanity's greatest strength is not in our technology or fleets, but in our hearts. Kale's presence is a gift, and your guidance has made him understand the best of us. You have created a legacy that will inspire countless generations." Leora felt her eyes water. "Your Majesty, I only did what I felt was right. He trusted me, and I could not abandon him." The Queen nodded. "And that choice, that courage, has changed the course of interstellar history." With the Queen's blessing, Leora and Kale began to travel between colonies, demonstrating how humans and alien species could collaborate. They showed how Kale's abilities could aid in exploration, energy conservation, and environmental restoration. Everywhere they went, people were inspired by the bond between human and alien, and by what humanity could achieve when courage and empathy guided action. During one journey, Leora and Kale arrived at a distant, uncharted planet. Local inhabitants were struggling with environmental hazards that threatened their homes. Leora coordinated with Kale, using his energy guidance to stabilize the atmosphere and reroute energy flows safely. The inhabitants watched in awe, realizing that humans, though physically small compared to some species, could solve problems with creativity, teamwork, and kindness. Kale glowed with delight as he watched the humans and aliens work together. Leora felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Their efforts had not only saved lives but had also built trust between species. Humanity, she realized, was not just surviving among the stars, it was leading by example. In quieter moments, Leora reflected on her journey with Kale. She thought about the dangers they had faced, the hostile fleets, the bureaucratic obstacles, and the uncertainty of the galaxy. Yet, every challenge had been an opportunity for growth, learning, and connection. Kale had taught her as much as she had taught him. Together, they had proven that courage, compassion, and ingenuity were a force more powerful than fear or aggression. Kale, too, had grown. No longer the frightened alien boy found on a distant planet, he was confident, curious, and wise beyond his years. He understood humans, their emotions, their values, and their potential for greatness. Leora knew that he would continue to learn and grow, spreading knowledge and compassion wherever he went. The story of Leora and Kale became a legend across the colonies. Children learned about their journey in schools, adults shared tales of their bravery, and scientists studied the bond between species as a model for cooperation. Kale's presence inspired humanity to strive for the best in themselves, showing that courage and empathy were as vital as intelligence or skill. One evening, as Leora and Kale sat together in the observation deck of their ship, watching the stars stretch endlessly across the galaxy, she spoke softly. We've done more than survive, Kale. We've shown the universe what humans can be. And together, we've made a difference that will last for generations. Kale glowed in response, his colors shifting in soft, harmonious patterns. Leora reached out and held his hand. They sat in silence, feeling the quiet power of their bond and the infinite possibilities before them. In the months that followed, Leora continued to advocate for cooperation between humans and alien species. Kale traveled with her, demonstrating his abilities and teaching others about trust, empathy, and curiosity. The galaxy slowly began to change. Conflicts were approached with negotiation, new discoveries were shared openly, and humans were recognized not just for their achievements, but for their courage and compassion. And through it all, Leora and Kale remained together. They had faced danger, defied fear, and navigated the unknown, proving that humanity's greatest strength was not weapons or wealth, but heart. The small alien boy had become a symbol of unity, and the human who had protected him became a symbol of courage. The stars continued to stretch across the sky, endless and bright. Leora looked at Kale and smiled. "The universe is full of challenges," she said, "but also full of hope, and as long as we face it together, there is nothing we cannot achieve." Kale's glow pulsed warmly in response, as if agreeing. Leora knew that their story was far from over. There would always be mysteries to explore, dangers to face, and lives to protect. But they were ready together. Human ingenuity and courage combined with Kale's extraordinary abilities would continue to inspire and guide the galaxy. The legacy of Leora Tran and Kale was not just in medals or recognition, but in every life they touched, every mind they inspired, and every act of courage they demonstrated. They had proven that humanity, at its best, could rise to meet any challenge, and that the bond between beings, no matter how different, could change the course of the universe itself. As the Starwind sailed silently among the stars, Leora held Kale's hand, feeling the warmth, trust, and infinite potential of their friendship. They had survived the unknown, inspired the galaxy, and shown the true power of courage, compassion, and unity. And with that, they faced the endless horizon, ready to continue their journey together. The universe awaited them, vast, mysterious, and full of wonder, and humanity, guided by heart and courage, was ready.